Imagine having one of the most beautiful views in the country on your doorstep. Miles of soft, golden sand and the rippling blue waves of the English Channel flowing away as far as the eye can see. Now imagine one day this view disappears, but it's okay. The building that stands in its place has a roof shaped just like the waves that used to ripple so blue, and vast glass panels that mirror the sandy seascape, now sadly lost. This is the story of Bournemouth's IMAX cinema, also known as the Waterfront building. But there is a slight problem in that it seems to have vanished. And that's because the palatial picture house was in fact demolished in 2013 after standing here for just 15 years. So why did it last such a short time? Why was it built in the first place? And why did it become England's most hated building? Hello and welcome to Lutopia. My name's Lewis and this is my look at interesting old buildings, urban design and local history. Starting on the south coast of England, for this is where I live, but who knows where we could end up. Now, let's start investigating the rise and spectacular fall of this infamous IMAX. So this is lovely Bournemouth. This place has been popular with holidaymakers since it was first developed during Victorian times. Back then, and like now, people loved spending time at the seaside, and in fact bathing in the sea was thought to cure all kinds of illnesses, such as TB and depression. And thanks to the rise of things like the railway and legal public holidays, there was nothing stopping people from escaping their horrible industrial towns and heading to Bournemouth for a cheeky weekend. But while many of the UK seaside resorts started off as harbour towns and fishing villages, Bournemouth's story is a bit different. Until the beginning of the 19th century, this area was little more than empty heathland. Then, in 1810, a retired soldier by the name of Lewis Tregonwell brought his wife here on holiday. Now, she'd been sad and unwell for a few years after losing a child, and being a modern and caring kind of husband, Captain Lewis figured a bit of sea air might sort her out. And sort her out it did. She loved this place so much, she suggested they build a house here. That house is now incorporated into today's Royal Exeter Hotel, and back in the day it was joined by streets of other holiday villas because Bournemouth was fast becoming a fashionable health resort. You see, people loved the balmy climate, they loved the salt water, and they loved the thousands of pine trees that had been planted. These were thought to have health-restoring powers. But what really tied it all together, and still does today, is this Bournemouth Pier. The original pier, built in the late 1850s, was a simple wooden jetty, but eventually it got replaced by something much grander, giving Victorian folk the perfect place to go roller skating, apparently. You'll find Bournemouth Pier here on Pier Approach, right in the middle of this gorgeous sandy beach. And it's here in this extremely visible and touristically important location that the IMAX was built. Just over there, in fact. Aww. The site originally housed some public baths built in 1838 and rebuilt in 1887 to commemorate Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee. These were times when not every household had its own plumbing, so for hygiene and public health's sake, a visit to the town's baths was pretty important. They were also places for social recreation and entertainment, and the new Pier Approach baths, built in 1937, had Turkish baths, sunbathing facilities and a large diving pool. Here they'd put on hugely popular aqua shows, which were basically synchronised swimming and diving displays, but ended up being full-on circus-style performances with stunts and storylines, and they actually look quite cool. So this evolution from public hygiene facility into community health, sport and entertainment hub made the Pier Approach baths a really unique and important indoor facility to go alongside Bournemouth's obvious outdoor ones. Therefore, of course, they were knocked down. Following a serious fire in 1984, the baths closed, and because this building, the Bournemouth International Centre, or BIC, opened up directly opposite and at the time contained a modern swimming pool with flumes and wave machines and stuff, the old public baths simply weren't needed anymore, so they got demolished in 1986. After this, the site remained empty for over a decade, only being used for car parking or the occasional fairground ride. But the town wanted something more for this landmark plot. Millions of people were visiting every year, and it was felt there just weren't enough things to do when the weather was bad, which it sometimes is in this country. They needed a family-friendly wet weather facility. What better than a cinema? There were already a couple of cinemas in the town centre in the 1990s, but these weren't purpose-built. They were old converted theatres. What Bournemouth Borough Council really wanted was something to drag the town into the 21st century. Something to make it a world-class resort destination. And it wouldn't just be a cinema. It would be an entire indoor leisure complex. Initial plans were drawn up and submitted to the council in 1996, but these got held up as town planners argued over traffic impact assessments and exciting things like that. Eventually, after a change of developer, new plans were submitted 1 year later. The new building would be split over 3 floors, and there'd be a large glass atrium at the front containing the lift shaft. At street level, you'd find a steakhouse on the left and a nightclub on the right. The long sides, a mixture of tinted glass and concrete, would feature a roof shaped like cascading waves. On one side would be an entrance leading to a fast food restaurant, coffee shop, and the cinema itself, while on the other would be a Chinese restaurant. In the middle, there'd be a children's play area, and at the top, a traditional English pub with a terrace looking out to sea. In theory, the Waterfront building would have everything to keep Bournemouth residents and visitors entertained all year round. And with significant political pressure to get the scheme going, the plans were approved. But when the structure started going up in 1998, people very quickly began to get annoyed. The thing is, between the original drawings and the ones that were given the green light, the total height had increased by 5 metres, or 17 feet. That's one whole story, and meant that this view of Pool Bay was completely blocked. Apparently, the increase in height was due to the IMAX cinema screen being so large it wouldn't fit unless the building was made taller. And the weird thing is, when the plans were sent out for public consultation, there were only 2 objections, and none of those were about the building's height. It seems that, until it started going up for real, people just hadn't twigged. The finished structure, which opened in 1999, was nothing if not different. Its sheer bulk had taken a number of people by surprise, and as if that wasn't bad enough, it was plagued by a number of major issues. Firstly, although fitted out with seats and a screen, there was no operator in place to actually run the cinema side of things. It took until 2002 for one to come on board, and even then, technical problems meant they could only show IMAX 3D films in 2D. And to make matters even worse, IMAX movies were expensive to buy, so they didn't change them very often. They were also only about half the length of standard movies, and yet cost more for a ticket. So people just didn't go. Less than a year after opening, the cinema was only operating 3 days a week, and the other businesses inside the building began complaining about the lack of customers. Then, in 2005, the cinema closed, never to reopen. That same year, as part of Channel 4's demolition series, where the public were asked to vote for buildings they wanted to be knocked down, it was voted the most hated building in England.
How could anybody build such a hideous building in such a place?
It's grey, ugly, concrete. They've got black windows, kind of seedy.
It's grey, it's very, very big, and it's repulsive.
And yet the Waterfront building soldiered on. By all accounts, the pub, restaurants and nightclub were fairly popular, and thanks to its location and amazing views, the complex had become a useful place to meet. But that was until the financial crisis of 2008, which pretty much killed it off. What was left was a rapidly emptying building, an angry public who were adamant they never wanted it in the first place, and a council completely powerless to do anything, because they didn't actually own it. The building was owned by a private investment fund. So, in 2010, Bournemouth Council bought the building for £7.5 million and put forward plans to reduce its height. Some people thought this would be an improvement. Others thought it would leave the building looking even uglier. What united everyone was that no one was very happy about the money it was costing. And the problem remained that whatever they did with the building, they would need to find something to put inside it. It was wondered by some whether it could become a swimming pool, ironically, as by then the one in the Bic had closed down. Well, no. The state of the economy at the time pretty much ruled out anything and everything, so without any definite future plans in place, the site was levelled in spring 2013. For a few years, the space was used for community events like concerts, festivals, and the Bournemouth Marathon. Then, in 2019, this exciting adventure golf course was built. All very nice, but not really a wet weather activity. So the question is, what exactly happened here? How did a building so universally hated get constructed in such a sensitive area? Well, the fact is that all too often, people don't realise the impact of a proposed structure until after it's been built. And of course that's too late. Whether you like the design of the Waterfront building or not, the biggest issue people had with it was its size. Had they realised it would be that big and that it would block the sea, they might have said no in the first place. But they didn't. And there lies the paradox. The building was pulled down thanks to the extreme strength of public opinion. But it was built thanks to a complete lack of public opinion. So could it be that the secret to designing community spaces is to engage a bit better with the community? Or maybe you actually like the Waterfront building. Were you a regular customer? Do you miss it? What do you think of this new crazy golf course? Do please let me know in the comments. Thank you ever so much for watching. Bye-bye.